How's everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of The Banker Next Door. I am your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a survey from Bank Director, their annual 2024 Governance Best Practices Survey. Really good survey kind of on risk oversight. And we're going to take a look at also a related article that goes along with the survey. So let's jump into it here. So this article is titled 2024 Governance Best Practices Survey, Exercising Independence. And some of the things that this survey covers is basically board responsibilities, risk oversight, composition, engagement, and governance practices. And they all get basically examined in this survey. Now, this article is written by Emily McCormick, who's the Vice President of Editorial and Research at Bank Director. And I think one of the key things that this survey basically asks is, can a dominant CEO or board member have a negative impact on their bank? So in July of 2023, Heartland Tri-State Bank closed after its CEO funneled $47.1 million out of the $139 million Kansas Bank over a matter of weeks, according to prosecutors. Federal agents said that was the direct cause of the Elkhart Bank's insolvency, but the Federal Reserve's Office of the Inspector General pointed to an underlying factor: Haynes' excessive influence as the bank's CEO and one of its larger shareholders. Employees asked to conduct the wire transfers were reluctant to question or report the activity, which didn't align with the wire policy and limits approved by the board. Significant internal control breakdowns and the influence of the CEO as a dominant management official created an opportunity for the series of apparently fraudulent wire transfers to be initiated and processed, wrote the OIG. So in Bank Director's 2024 Governance Best Practices Survey, sponsored by the law firm Bradley, Arent, Bolt, Cummings, almost 1/5 of responding directors and CEOs report that a single individual directly or indirectly dominates their board's deliberations. 1/5. Most say this presents a mixed effect on discussions, and some even believe it's beneficial. But Bradley partner Robert Maddox says boards overly influenced by one individual can't act in the best interest of the bank and its owners. They're not exercising independent control, he says. The outsized influence of a dominant personality means the other directors are not independently asserting themselves. So proposed guidelines from the FDIC issued in October of 2023 set out the agency's expectations for banks above $10 billion in assets that are regulated by the agency. The guidelines focus on board independence, composition, and risk oversight, and highlight the dangers of any individual having too much influence in the boardroom. Dominant policymakers could inhibit directors' independent judgment. The FDIC also expressed concerns about prospective mismanagement and a power vacuum should that individual leave. So training focused on the board's role could help directors address this potential problem without being adversarial, says Maddox, because you're not discussing the person, you're discussing the broader responsibilities of the board. The survey of directors and CEOs conducted in May and June examines board engagement, risk oversight, and recent regulatory scrutiny around governance practices. So I think this is a really interesting thing to point out. And I will say I covered this failure of Heartland Tri-State Bank. It's actually in my crypto series. It was one of the, I think is the 7th installment of the crypto series, because this whole failure was inadvertently related to basically a crypto fraud, a crypto scam. I believe, again, a lot of this is a little tough because some of the details around this thing have been a little sketchy. Because the regulators, the prosecutors, they were very slow in releasing any information related to this, and it's been kind of a slow leak, basically over the last year. And like I said, so the CEO was basically, he had funneled $47 million out of this bank, so he's going to get charged with probably wire fraud, bank fraud, a whole bunch of other things. He was taking the money, and he had either lost money on crypto bets, and so he was taking this money to try to cover those bets, or he was taking the money out and he was putting them into crypto assets. But either way, crypto was involved in this whole thing. But that being aside, This does bring up a very interesting question. When you have a dominant CEO and a dominant board member, can that have a negative impact on the bank? And I would say that it depends. It depends on the person. I think it can have a very good impact. I think, like I said, in this situation with Heartland Tri-State Bank, it had the worst possible impact because it caused the failure of the bank. But again, I think that a lot of your success stories with a lot of banks and throughout the history of banking, like you did have a dominant individual there that drove the vision and the culture of the bank. And you saw, tremendous amount of success there. I think, what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of, I'm thinking of the McCoy family. That's what I'm thinking. I'm glancing over here, looking at a book that I have on the McCoy family right here. But the McCoy family was basically Bank One, and they, Jamie Dimon's all. That's a great story. I'll have to tell that sometime in another episode. But there, you had. 3 generations of McCoy bankers basically leading this financial institution, all kind of dominant personalities in their own right, and they led that organization to a tremendous amount of success over multiple decades. And so in that situation, it was good because they built a great bank. They did the right thing. They had a great culture. But it's very interesting. And then it kind of the article here kind of goes through the findings. And now, before I get to the findings here, I want to actually jump over to the actual survey itself. So here's the 2024 Governance Best Practices Survey. Yeah, it talks about bank director, talks about the law firm Bradley that carried it out. We kind of went through all this already. So what are the key findings here? So we have confident directors. So respondents widely indicate assurance in the board's ability to execute on its responsibilities, particularly meeting its fiduciary responsibility to shareholders, supporting any independent audit and risk function, and reviewing and approving bank policies. Active deliberations. 44% say all board members actively contribute to discussions. Almost half say most directors contribute, with 1 or 2 who don't actively participate. When asked about their own participation, 2/3 say they speak more than the average board member. Few perfect cultures. Respondents point to various shortfalls in their boardrooms, including a lack of diverse viewpoints or backgrounds, 21%, a dominant board member or executive, 21%, and a lack of long-term vision, 20. That's an interesting one. 1/3 perceive no deficiencies in their board's culture. Board composition. Almost half say their board has 3 or more members who they would characterize as diverse based on gender, race, or ethnicity. Most say their board relies on directors, 87%, and or executives, 66%, personal and professional networks to source candidates. Onboarding practices. 85% have an onboarding plan for new directors, which commonly includes one-on-one meetings with the CEO, 83%, reviewing recent financial statements, 73%, and meeting with the chair or another director to discuss board policies and procedures, 66%. And then finally, setting the risk appetite. 40% say their board reviews the bank's risk appetite. Put simply, the amount of risk the bank would accept. Measures by metrics like concentration limits every year. Another 33% review this statement quarterly, while 12% say their board doesn't review the risk appetite at all. So that's kind of a interesting thing. I don't know why you wouldn't review your risk appetite. That's kind of interesting. But I would say a lot of this stuff, again, I'm not surprised by a lot of these results. I think a lot of this stuff is pretty on par. I mean, the onboarding practices sound about right. Board compositions, again, sounds about right. Few perfect cultures. I think that was interesting. 1/3 perceive no deficiency in their board's culture. 21% say they lack diverse viewpoints or backgrounds. A dominant board member or executive, and a lack of long-term vision. I think that probably is very interesting. Maybe that's because those are banks that are looking to be sold in the short term. Maybe. Active deliberations, again, sounds about right. So here's the thing with active deliberations, right? So say you have a group of 10 people. and this is true. This is absolutely true. Say you have 10 people. Out of those 10 people, you are always going to get 2, maybe 3 that are going to become naturally the dominant voices in the room. Not to say that they say a lot. It's just that their words are going to carry the most weight. And then, 2 people, 3 people at the bottom are going to say, next to nothing. And then you're going to have about 5 people, 6 people in the middle who will kind of say a little bit here and there. I mean, that's just how it goes. It's kind of like a sales team. Like if I had a sales team of 10 people, I can tell you that I would have 2 or 3 that would rise to be the very best. You'd have 2 at the bottom, and you'd have 7 or 8 in the middle that just are just kind of average. That's just what happens. And that's just what it's just goes into kind of one of these old school rules of nature of just how things work out. So say, again, having 44% say that all board members actively contribute to discussions, I think that's good. About half say that most directors contribute, with 1 or 2 who don't actively participate. Like I said, you figure if most boards have probably about 9 members on average. When asked about their own participation, 2/3 say they speak more than the average board member. So, okay, so there you go. So, again, all that sounds pretty average there. Nothing too crazy. And then the rest of the survey here just kind of goes through all the questions. Does the board set expectations for individual directors in the following areas? And it's a lot of fun. So, and there's a lot. Again, if you delve through this, I'm not going to go through every single question here and really do a deep dive on all these numbers, but obviously a lot of good stuff here. I just wanted to kind of point out and I just wanted to address the survey, kind of hit the highlights. And again, I liked that question of, can a dominant CEO or board member have a negative impact on the bank? And so I think the answer is both yes and no. And I really think ultimately it comes down to the individual. If you have somebody that unfortunately is not of good character, not of good morals, not of good ethics, then you get something like what happened here with Heartland Tri-State Bank. Interestingly, and I have to go back and look at my notes on this. Interestingly, I think that this guy, the CEO of this bank, was a very well-respected guy who had been in the business for like 30 something years. And he was, well known to everybody in that area. So it wasn't like, I don't think this was a case where like, this was a guy who was kind of like a brand new CEO, or he had just got hired as a CEO the year before or something like that. If memory serves me right, I believe this gentleman was there for a long time and had an impeccable reputation. So I think that's what made it all the more shocking when, this whole thing came out and this whole thing went down. But again, I think, again, if you have a great CEO who's a good person, of good moral and good character, they exhibit good leadership styles, like servant leadership, things like that. I think that if they're dominant and they have a great vision and they understand what's going on, then it's fine. Like, hey, look, people you may not like Jamie Dimon, but he's a dominant figure, dominant personality at the biggest bank in America. And, by the numbers, the guy's done an amazing job there. He guided them through the financial crisis. He guided them through the pandemic. The guy's had an amazing run there for how many years? For almost 20 years. The guy's, I think he's been 20 years or maybe 19 years as the CEO there at JP Morgan Chase. And the guy's done an amazing job. He's going to go down in the history books. He comes out of that whole McCoy, family in that deal. That's where, Jamie went to work there after he kind of had a falling out at Citibank, and then they got absorbed into JP Morgan, and the rest is history, as they say. But I think Jamie Dimon again is like almost like the ultimate example of the dominant, CEO. And everybody hangs on Jamie Dimon's words. So, so again, I think it could be good and it can be bad. It's just a question of the type of individual that you have there, and are they, do they abuse what's in front of them? So it's, it's a tough thing, because if you get the right person, obviously they can bring it, they can, run the organization and turn it into an incredibly successful place and do amazing things. But like you said, if you get to pick the wrong person, you can go the other way on you. So. But anyway, like I said, so I just wanted to point out, I think, again, another great survey. Bank Director has a ton of great surveys that they put out throughout the year. I like covering most of them. I thought this was a good one, just a lot of good things to bring up here. So like I said, I'll wrap up with, if you like this episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that always helps the channel. Please make sure to check out thebankernextdoor.com. Remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please make sure to leave your comments down below, as I love to always get back to everybody. And I hope everyone stays safe out there. And please check out some of the other content on the channel. And I will see everybody again real soon. Thanks a lot.